We're live. Good morning, folks. My name is Dustin Jones. I am one of two faculty members with the Older Adult Division with the Institute of Clinical Excellence. My partner in crime is Christina Previtt. And I wanted to give you all a reminder about the ICE Sampler. So that is in Las Vegas, not this weekend, but next weekend. So the second weekend of April, so the weekend after Easter. A bunch of the faculty are going to be coming together in Las Vegas at R.J. Williams Place Physical PT, and we're just going to be sharing 2 hours of some of our best content, very interactive, probably a few workouts, maybe a trail run or two. I'm going to be advocating for the runners at this event. Good morning, Allie. But it's going to be an awesome weekend. I'm super pumped to meet a lot of you all that listen to this show, to meet a lot of the faculty in person. And, just to learn from such a diverse group of people, that's going to be very refreshing for me. So I'm going to put a link in the Facebook post so you all can check that out. I highly encourage you to do so. It's going to be one of those, can't miss events. When we get that amount of people together and those types of people, it's going to be a special thing. So let's get into today's topic at hand. This is Older Adult Wednesday. And if you work with older adults, one thing that you hear of often is the F word, falls. That's right, falls. It is a big issue in the world of geriatrics. How can we prevent falls? How can we reduce the risk of falling? But I know for me, especially when I was in the outpatient ortho setting, I wasn't really thinking about falls that much. I was, mainly concerned with kind of the aches and pains that often brought that patient into my clinic. I wasn't very cognizant of the impact of falls, what that did to someone's life and the trajectory in terms of, what they can do later on in life. But now being kind of on the other side of things in home health, my gosh, it is such a big issue. Even without knowing the statistics on this stuff, is something that we should definitely care about. But I'm going to give you some numbers. I know you all probably heard many of these before, but 1 in 4 people over the age of 65 fall each year. So if you're over 65, there's a 25% chance that they're going to fall. Not necessarily an injurious fall, but just a fall in general. Every year, there's over 3 million people that are treated in the ED, the emergency department, for injuries related to a fall. 3 million people. And if you think about what it costs for an emergency department visit, which can vary dramatically, but it ain't cheap. We'll say that. So it's a big issue. It's a very common issue, but it's one that we can definitely have an impact on. So I'm going to read a few things. I took some notes for this one. There's going to be lots of links in this Facebook post. So if you listen to this on the podcast, I highly encourage you to go on the ICE Facebook page and look this video up. Just search the title. But I want to talk in particular about a systematic review and meta-analysis that was released in 2017 in January, I believe. It was called Determining the Risk of Falls in Community-Dwelling Older Adults, a systematic review and meta-analysis using post-test probability. So this is in the Journal of Geriatric Physical Therapy. And the purpose of this article, I'm just going to read this verbatim so I don't screw this up. The purpose was to evaluate the predictive ability of history questions, self-report measures, and then performance-based measures for assessing fall risk of community-dwelling older adults by calculating and comparing post-test probability values for individual tests and measures. That's a mouthful. But what they were basically trying to do is to determine how predictive are some questions that you may ask your patients, predictive of if they're going to have a future fall. How predictive are some of these self-report measures? How predictive are some of these functional outcome measures that we perform in the geriatric PT world? And they found some interesting data that spans a long period of time. But Erin Carey, who's a physical therapist in New York City, and she's also the co-host of a segment on the Senior Rehab podcast, listened to this episode, read this article, and created a calculator where you can actually calculate a percentage fall risk based on the data that was found in this meta-analysis. And obviously a link is going to be into this post. But I want to just read through some of this stuff because when I found this, it was just fascinating to think. So 65 and up, this is kind of the cohort. If that person that walks into your clinic has a history of falling, if they've fallen before, if you click yes on this, 43.5% chance that they're going to have a future fall. Okay, now if they haven't had a fall, but they are afraid of falling, that makes their chance 37.5%, which is pretty significant. But then if you combine the history of falling with the fear of falling, that is 51.9% chance that they are going to have a future fall. When we say future, there's not necessarily, within a year or anything like that. The data, I believe, on this meta-analysis was they had to be tracking at least a minimum of 6 months after they asked these questions and did these self-report measures. But 51.9%, if you've had a history of falling and you are fearful of falling, that is a significant number. Avery, good morning. So I'll put a link to that. You all should definitely check that out. But so why does that even matter? All this data, these percentages, fall risk, all this stuff, why does it even matter? I want you all to think, especially you all in the outpatient ortho setting, how many of your patients are 65 and up? And I would venture to say that it is probably the majority. I don't believe this data is published yet, but it was released at CSM. Greg Hartley, he's the president of the Academy of Geriatric PT, said this, quoting some data that the APTA has done through a survey, that over around one third of outpatients are 65 and up. So we would consider them, to be older adult that, would kind of go along with the study that we're talking about. 1/3 of those patients, 33% of your patients, you need to start thinking about falls. But how many times do we completely ignore that? How many times do we just focus on their knee that hurts, or their knee, or their low back, or their neck? We just focus on that one particular spot or that one particular area. Hopefully you all that listen to this podcast, you're familiar with the APHPT. You want to talk about moving, you want to talk about fuel, connect, endure, all those pillars that we talk about, their sleep patterns. But, I would not say that's the norm out in the outpatient setting. We want to fix their back pain, and then we typically get them out the door. But I'm telling you, you are leaving a lot on the table if you are not having this discussion or even looking into fall risk. So I know the next thing, the question is probably, well, how do I do that? Do I just ask them a question? Are you afraid of falling? You are? Cool. Like, what do you do with that information? Well, I'm going to introduce you to a lovely resource that the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, so the CDC, has created, called STEADI. I don't love the name of this, Stopping Elderly Accidents, Deaths, and Injuries. That, Will Boyd, good morning. That is, I would say, an ageist name, but it sounds cool when you put it all together, STEADI. But I'm going to show you this algorithm. Super simple. This is all free. It's a PDF. People on the podcast definitely get the link to this. But it basically just gives you an algorithm of how to think through fall risk and just kind of guide you with your assessment from screening to assessment. That I find is particularly helpful for y'all that are in outpatient ortho, but any setting, honestly. And so what does this look like? So we start off with the key questions. So these are backed by data to have a significant predictive value in future falls. Okay, so this is not just guessing. This is not just making assumptions. This is evidence. These are evidence-based questions that have predictive value in assessing fall risk. And the key questions: have you fallen in the past year? Do you feel unsteady with standing or walking? And do you worry about falling? If any of those questions are responded to as yes, that kind of puts off the red flag that you need to dig a little deeper. You need to look at their balance, their gait, their strength capacity. And so what they have done is basically given you physical therapists, a few measures, a few functional outcome measures, which I know, you outpatient ortho folks aren't doing a lot of these from what I hear, but it's the timed up and go, the 30-second chair stand test, and the 4-stage balance test. I'm not going to go into the particulars of those tests right now, but you can on the STEADI website. And so based on the performance of those outcome measures, that's going to tell you, okay, I need to look a little deeper. Why do we know that? Because there is some awesome data on looking at some of the the norms and the cutoff values for some of these tests. So for example, the timed up and go. if they do a timed up and go where they, stand up from a chair, walk 3 meters, turn around, come back and sit, if they are over 12 seconds on that timed up and go, that's going to give you some good data that you need to look a little deeper into what's going on. And so this guide, I'm telling y'all, this guide is awesome. It even tells you what to look at if someone has an issue in terms of gait, strength, or balance. But you need to go into that multifactorial risk assessment. And so for those that do not work in geriatrics, a lot of this is going to be something you probably don't think a lot about with a lot of your patients. But you want to look at their medications, do a medication review. There are a lot of issues with medications that can contribute to fall risk and some of the issues that can create. Postural dizziness. So, shout out to RJ. Do they have issues when going from one position to another? Does the room start spinning on them? Do they get dizzy? You need to dig deeper into those symptoms, but that can contribute to a fall. Do they have postural hypotension? That is a very common one that we'll see. Avery says commonly find tugs that are around 20 seconds. I know Avery, we work together in the home health setting, but he's mainly an outpatient now. These are community dwelling older adults that are taking 20 seconds to get out of a chair, walk 3 meters, and turn around. Those people, which I know Avery has already identified them as at risk for falling, those are people that we really need to capture and definitely investigate that situation further. In terms of the multifactorial assessment, so you can go into cognitive screening. That can be, a little difficult a difficult conversation to have for sure, especially in outpatient ortho. But cognition impacts someone's ability to stay up on their feet. So we need to be able to screen that, whether it's with, a MOCA or a clock drawing test or some of those tools that we have. We need to check their footwear, check their vision, their sensation. Good morning, Mike. And then also, are they using an assistive device? They probably don't want to. A lot of people, can be a little stubborn, which, I understand. These are all difficult conversations that are really awkward for a lot of us. But the more repetition you get, the more reps, you'll understand how to navigate these situations, to walk alongside people, to talk about, vision, to talk about the use of assistive devices, if they should or should not be driving. Some of those difficult conversations that make us kind of screech up a little bit. So all that to say, the STEADI is awesome. It really guides you through, asking the questions, doing, getting some of these functional outcome measures. They're very easy to do, very quick, and then going through that multifactorial risk assessment to dive deeper and actually see what is contributing to their functional performance. Okay, so all that stuff, I'm going to put the link in the Facebook post, but why is this helpful? First thing, it's a screen that actually has predictive value. It's not made up movements, made up questions. This has several systematic reviews and peer-reviewed articles that have been published that support what we're doing. Okay, so we're not just making something up, and this is actually evidence-based screening that has predictive value. I want you to grasp that. This is valuable information that you can leverage. That gives you a framework. So for those that are not as comfortable working with older adults, I mean, come on. It doesn't get any simpler than that. 1 page, people. It's not even a 2-page document. 1-page algorithm and how to navigate the fall risk assessment process that can guide you towards your interventions. Super powerful document. And then lastly, this for me is super important. I feel like one of the most valuable things about utilizing the STEADI screen is it is not created for physical therapists. It's created for healthcare providers. So physicians, primary care physicians, emergency physicians, PAs, NPs, even RNs are seeing this material. There are medical residencies that are covering the STEADI screen. And the beautiful thing about that is those people are hearing timed up and go, 30-second chair stand, 4-stage balance test, gait, strength, balance problems. Who do you think comes to mind when they hear those words? Us, physical therapists. So this has a great opportunity to create that multidisciplinary communication. So we're speaking the same language. We're not using this crazy PT jargon that only makes sense to 25% of physical therapists, but these are medical terms. We're using the same language. We're receiving this information and kind of bridging that gap between what they're seeing in their primary care visit and what we can actually offer them in physical therapy. So that is huge. You can leverage something like the STEADI and go into some of, the referring physicians you have partnerships with and say, hey, I know, a lot of people come to see you for medication reviews. They may see you because they have some aches and pains. Let me show you some things that can help you determine very simply if I can help your people. And then you take them through this. Have any of your patients fallen in the past year? Do they worry about falling? Do they feel unsteady or walk or on their feet or walking? You can talk to these, physicians and say, if they answer yes to any of those questions, that already puts them at a low to moderate fall risk, and I know I can help them. I can serve your patients. I can reduce their fall risk, and we can both, with our powers combined, make sure this person stays as functional as possible. That's super valuable. This isn't just some random screen that some physical therapy company made up. This is the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. CDC created this that we can leverage to connect with those people in our communities. I love this stuff. You talk about get PT first. We talk about get PT first before you have, back surgery, or, you have knee surgery, or some of these things related to pain. Get PT first before you have a fall. And we can really preach this message in an effective manner, speak the same language, and leverage something that was created by the CDC to really connect with some of our other, the other healthcare providers on our team. So that's STEADI, fall risk, how you can help over 33% of your patients, especially if you're in the outpatient ortho setting. It's good stuff. So if you're listening to the podcast, go to the Facebook post. I'm about to blow it up with all these links, lots of really good resources, lots of good PDFs. So be sure to check that out. Also, the ice sampler, once again, the weekend after Easter in Vegas. Mike's watching. Mike Eisenhart will be there. Lots of us will be there. 2 hours of our best content, all under one roof. Lots of good meals will be had and good workouts as well. So I'm really excited about that. I already have a few buffets picked out in Vegas. I've never been there before. So yeah, Mike's giving a thumbs up. It'll be fun. I'm excited. All right. You have a lovely day. I'll talk to you soon.